Hi, Gordie. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, Jack. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me on my channel. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I want to ask you at what age did you know that you were going to be playing pro hockey?
I think I made the All Star team in a mite tournament when I was 7. So
Young age. Wow.
I'm just teasing. But yeah, I mean, it was a process. Obviously,
Yeah.
you just keep. I had 1 year where I jumped from Adams to Junior B in Detroit when I went from playing with a lot of familiar friends on my sports pee wee Batum age, and then when I was 15, I jumped up to junior on a team in
Wow.
Detroit that ended up winning the national tournament, and which led down the road to me going to Victoria in the Western League.
Wow. That's a big jump too. Yeah, that's huge. Uh,
Yeah, I was just playing with guys all the way up to 19 years old. That it's a little bit more. Not only the hockey, but just kind of fitting in with older guys. And my dad was a little concerned on it. He made a talk to a couple of the captain guys that you better not lead my kid down the wrong road here.
do you feel that made the improvement for you to get into the NHL, making that jump early?
Yeah, I mean, things just kind of escalated in a sense. I mean, when I was 15, I played junior B. I
Hmm.
was 16 in 11th grade. I played with the junior wings in Detroit, which was against 7 Canadian teams, which
Hmm.
was a challenging year. And then when I turned 17, I went out and played in the Western Junior League, Victoria Cougars,
Oh, okay.
and we had a real good team, good coach.
Nice.
Played with a guy named Milt Bridgman, who was almost first player picked in the whole draft,
Yes.
and Kurt Frazier, Kim Claxton, and Rick LaPointe, who was the first round pick. Guys like that. So yeah, I was I'm glad I made the move and
Hmm.
made the best decision. I met my wife in Victoria, and we're still married after 42 years. So
Nice.
that was a good decision.
Yes. Uh, how many years did you play in the NHL and WHA total?
Yeah, I played 4 years in the NHL, and I'm sorry, WHA. My first 4 years, I signed when I was 18, and then I was part of the merger with Edmonton, Winnipeg. I was with New England, with Hartford Whalers at the time,
Hmm.
and I forget who the other team was, Quebec, I think it was at the time.
Yes. Yes.
And so then I got traded to Minnesota after 5.5 years total, in playing in Hartford. And then I ended up playing 15 more years in the NHL. And then I played about a year and a half in the IHL kind of to wrap up my career.
Hmm. You were the first American-born player to reach 1,000 games in the NHL. Did you know when that happened? Were you aware of it when the record was, broken for 1,000 games?
No, not really. I mean, it wasn't, part of one of those things you appreciate more later in life. But
Hmm.
at the time, you're just kind of going one game at a time. And there's a couple guys like Mark Howe was one of them.
Hmm.
And part of it is just good fortune, not getting hurt, being able to play more games. And
Yeah.
yeah, at the end, I was proud to be that first American to play 1,000 games. I had 3 older brothers that all played hockey, and growing up in Detroit, right across the river from Canada,
Hmm.
you kind of know how challenging it was for American hockey players back in the 60s, 70s, and so
Yeah.
on.
It wasn't that easy for
So
sure.
kind of a funny story. When
Yes.
I did end up getting my 1,000th game, I was part of the Boston Bruins at that time.
Hmm.
And you talk about being, you know, the uh, the other guy, you could call it. We had Gary Bettman, I saw him, downstairs, and I knew they were going to do a little acknowledging my 1,000 games with, playing, which they do now. Now the guys get a beautiful silver stick and
Yes.
all kinds of nice things. And but at the same time that I got acknowledged in Boston, Ray Bork played his 1,000th game. So
Oh,
I think
wow.
there was a little bigger applause for Ray than there was for Gordie Roberts the same night.
But how cool is that? Two guys
Anyways.
in the same game or same team, correct? Or no?
Yeah, we were on the same team,
Okay.
and I can't remember, when he got his, I got
Uh-huh.
mine, but the league ended up acknowledging it. It's kind of what Gary Bettman was there that night,
Oh,
and so yeah,
that's cool.
it's some new. I guess overall, total wise, I probably played, I don't know, 1,400 games.
That's a
With
lot.
WHA, I played 325 games, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Played 1,100 with the NHL, and then another 150 in playoff games. So
Yeah.
definitely adds up after a while.
Yeah. You also played in the Canada Cup. I remember watching you on TV when I was a kid. There was a '84 Canada Cup, I believe,
Right, right.
and there was a
Yeah, it was
yeah.
always proud moment. Put the USA jersey on and
Uh-huh.
played in 2 World Championships over in Europe, and I played in the '84 Canada Cup. That was kind of the prime of the Canadian team with Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier and
Yeah.
Coffey and different guys. And our American team did well. We ended up getting to the semifinals. Ended up losing to Sweden, who played Canada in the final. I think Canada ended up winning the '84 Canada Cup.
Yeah. There was a body check I remember watching, and the glass shattered. Do you remember that incident happening?
Yeah, I do. I kind of remembering hitting some guy, pretty good into the boards, and luckily when the glass shattered, that we didn't end up getting cut through it or anything else. He took a little bit more of the punishment than I did, but I do remember that time.
Yeah. That's the first time I saw glass shatter on a body check.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Was the level of play different in the WHA to the NHL since you played in both leagues? What do you have to compare?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you.
I think that WHA, I think overall as a league, was great for a lot of players being able to, get a bump in their salary. It was the first time, you had a little bit more leverage, especially for my older brother played in the NHL and was able to play a couple of years in the World Hockey. And, it was a good situation where, if the team in the NHL, only offered you X number of dollars and the WHA came along and offered you 20% more, you had an option to get a raise and go play. So there's a lot of good players. I mean, the depth wasn't as strong as the NHL, but when you list of all the young players, I mean, from Mark Messier to Mike Gardner to Ron Langway, Craig Hartsburg, on and on. I think I came in the league as an 18-year-old with John Tonelli and Mark Napier.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I got no regrets playing in the WHA and making that transition. It definitely helped me.
Yes. Did you have any tough opponents that you had to play against? Who was the toughest, would you say, that you had to face on a one-on-one or front of the net or,
Well, I think, we mentioned earlier, Gordie Howe was in the WHA. And my first year when I was just 18 with the Hartford Whalers, or the New England Whalers back then, we had a 7-game series with them in the semifinals at that time. And, to go 7 games against Gordie Howe in the playoffs was a great memory. And, that was my first year of 4 where I either played against him or with him for a couple of years. But at 46, he was still a force. And I always remember the 7th game, they ended up beating us to win. And he had like 3 points and, just was a difference maker out there. And, so he's one guy. Just, Bobby Hall in Winnipeg had a
Yeah.
great team with Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nilsson as the center. That
Yes.
was those guys really played well and had great teams. And then going into the 80s, I mean, anytime you played Edmonton with Gretzky and Messier as a 1-2 center punch, I mean, you knew you were in for a tough night. So that was probably the best team that I played against during that era.
Yeah, those guys were unbelievable. So going in the corner with Gordie Howe, was it more rougher with him than say with a average player, or was it about this? Was he really tough in the corners? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I would say he definitely controlled the corners and the boards. He also had a stick that he could let you know if he wanted to cut you over the eye for 4 stitches or 8 stitches.
Yeah.
he was a tough player in addition to being a really good player.
Yeah.
But,
And Mark Messier is another one, kind of similar styles as Gordie Howe.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
yes.
Messier had a little bit of that edge to him that he backed up. He's six. He was about 6'2", 205 pounds, and similar to Gordie, and they were both strong guys. And
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you have any favorite coaches over the years? And I know you played for quite a few, some legends too.
Yeah, I would say, it's always easier when you end up winning, and as a player, you get a fair amount of ice time and all that, where you really enjoy playing for a certain coach. I'd say my first year in Pittsburgh, Bob Johnson, who knew me from that 84 Canada Cup. And, he was a real positive guy to play for, made you feel good, and he cared about you as a player. And I'd say he was probably my favorite coach.
Yeah, he was a
the
great
following year after we lost Bob to brain cancer that first year after we won. Scotty Bowman took over. And, I mean, just to be a player under Scotty, who ended up winning 11, 12 cups through his career, I mean, there's a lot of good memories there, too.
Yeah. What would you say that they did different than your average coach out there that made him great?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bob, had a nice way of, if you're you got 20 players, if you're in the top 10, you're always going to get a lot of ice time. And, things are pretty positive, with the coach and so on, because you are one of those, higher end players. If, Bob Johnson's situation in Pittsburgh, I was one of the bottom 10 players. Your third, fourth line guys. I was probably a 4, 5, 6 defenseman who, played a lot, contributed. But, Bob made you feel important and made you feel like you were a big part of the team. And Scotty seemed to, that top 10 players, he really rode those guys in a sense of ice time and playing them. And, he was a little harder on the bottom 10 than Bob was, but he was a winner. I mean, he just knew so much about the game, and he'd bring you in for a little 3-minute talk, and there's a certain message there that you were definitely, if you're smart, you listen to, and help your game.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys are best of all time forever. I mean, they're amazing.
Yeah, both of them. Great coaching careers.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you won 2 Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh Penguins. My question is, how much bonus money does a player get when they say get through the quarterfinals and then they win the cup? Do they give you anything for getting there?
Yeah, you always, through the league, you make that much more every round that you win. There's a financial success part to it. A lot of players have, bonuses in their contract if you, win, so many rounds of the playoffs, or you get to the the playoffs and you win a Stanley Cup, there's definitely it helped. I think add 2 more years onto my career. I think around the league, the guys that do win Stanley Cups, it gives them a little bit more of a character standpoint of being a winner. And towards the end of my career, I was able to play 2 more years in Boston.
That's awesome.
And I think that helped.
Yeah. So the league pays. So it's not the team owner that gives the money. The league actually pays the players. So it's a little different.
Well, the league has
Okay.
certain bonuses that every player gets. When they win, the first round, second round, you got to win 4 rounds to win a Stanley Cup, and then a lot of times on a personal contract. If back then, anyways, I mean, there's a lot of guys who made some extra bonus money through winning those rounds and then winning a Stanley Cup. So, I mean, I'm sure a guy like, the Stars made a little more than, the bottom 5 guys on the roster, but still, it's, the biggest bonus you get is your name engraved on the Stanley Cup. And that's something that, is more important than anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of like trophies, you think they should have a defenseman award? Because they have the Norris Trophy. It's always for the top scoring defenseman, but not that they never give credit for a guy who blocks shots, breaks up plays. What do you think?
I think with all the analytics they have in the game now and, so many different statistics and so on, I mean, the defensemen that usually end up winning the Norris are, in the top 5 highest scoring defensemen and, play the power play a lot. And I'd say one of the most underrated parts of being a defenseman in the NHL, and they keep that stat now, is making that first pass under pressure out of your zone on the tape and, getting, the play up ice quick. There's only 2 assists for every goal, but if they added that assist to whoever that defenseman was who made that first pass out of the zone, I think that'd be a nice, like an unsung defensive type award.
Yes.
And obviously blocking shots and playing a good defensive game is important, but there are little things that there's enough analytics to, and fans would understand, maybe a unsung type defenseman who is just as valuable as that guy who gets 70 points because he's on the power play.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. If you were commissioner of the NHL, what rules would you add or change?
Yeah, I saw something recently where the NHL, and they've got a veteran group of players and some, maybe some past management people. And I think there's about 12 of them. They got together looking at different things that, could improve the game down the road. And, it's hard to change the size of the net or different things like that because of the long tradition of, guys who scored goals in the 70s, comparable if they did make the net, 2 feet wider or whatever, would be a little challenging. But the one thing that I did like is not an Olympic size rink. The rink right now is 200 by 85.
Yes.
And if you could widen it to like 92 feet, and with all the players' size a lot bigger now and so on, I think that just having that extra 7-8 feet of ice would allow for more puck movement, better plays out there.
What do you think of the net? Too much room behind the net. That's why there's not enough shots. There's a lot of play behind the net. You think they would go back to the old style where they brought it, the goal lines closer to the...
I'm not certain on that one. I mean, something like that, they'd have to go to the American League and let them see it for a year or two to make a decision if it, is a positive or not. I mean, there's positives to the new red line, but there's also negatives to a lot of these long slap shot passes that guys just tip in and, get a forecheck going. I mean, I think, back in our day when you had a red line, you had to make more passes up ice to And, the other thing that I did like in a recent thing is they were talking about, like right now with the trap and so on, forwards are like defensemen skating backwards
Mm-hmm.
all the way from, the the other zone back to their zone. And somebody said, well, forwards shouldn't be able to skate backwards until they get past the red line.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a good rule. That way, the neutral zone would be a little bit more open to making plays instead of having to go, against four defensemen, basically.
Yeah, because there's trap in the middle. Yeah. That
Yeah.
that does slow the game down somewhat. And
Yeah, I think it does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you think putting the red line back in is a good idea because of all the concussions because there's a lot of more concussions now because of the open ice in the middle. And would you do anything there?
Well, like I mentioned, I mean, I think, back in the 70s when there was a red line,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot more
Yeah.
passing coming out of the zone through the neutral zone and so on. But, there's a lot of positives too with no red line. So you'd almost have to do a trial in the American League.
Yeah, it might be
Maybe do
best.
half the season, with no red line,
And
in the
see.
other half with a red line, and kind of see what's best,
Yeah. So, yeah, after you retired from the game, were you still involved with hockey? Are you still involved with hockey?
Yeah, I'm 66 now, and I'm kind of, I guess, semi-retired now. But yeah, I spent 13 years at the NHL level. I spent
Mm-hmm.
5 with Phoenix Coyotes, from
Okay.
player development to assistant coach in scouting. And
Mm-hmm.
through an ownership change there, I ended up going to Montreal Canadiens for 8 years in pro scouting.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I came back in the Twin Cities, where I've lived a long time, and got into coaching high school hockey for
Oh,
about 6 years.
that's awesome. Wow.
And yeah, so
Yeah, I
kind
gotta
of stayed in
ask
the
you.
game 40 years.
Yeah, that's a lot of hockey. I gotta ask you the question for scouts. Now, making a decision on a player, how many times do you have to see that player before you decide whether to pick him in the draft?
Yeah, as far as young players go, I
Uh
mean,
huh.
obviously it helps a little bit more the more you see them in different
Mm-hmm.
situations and so on and that. But I remember my first pro scouting game I went to, and trying to get a feel for sitting in the press box and evaluating players. And sometimes you get lucky, and uh, my point is that Pavel Datsyuk with Detroit, I saw him play his first exhibition game out in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he just stood out. And, as a scout, you're doing reports after the game. And, it's always easy when somebody does a lot like
Yeah.
Pavel did. And you can really notice, man, this guy is going to be a heck of a player. It's
Yeah.
not just me saying that, but obviously he had a great career.
Yes.
And then there's other times you can go to a game and, you're watching someone, and, at the end, you're kind of like, what'd that guy do again? you know? So it's always nice when players kind of jump out and show you how good they are instead
Yeah.
of you trying to find them sometimes.
Yeah. Is there a specific thing that scouts look for? I mean, back in the day, did
Oh,
it
yeah.
change a lot from now to when, like, say, 15, 20 years ago, as far as what they're looking
Well,
for?
yeah. I mean, it's always, the same a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, skating and size, agility, hockey sense, compete level, things like that. But, I mean, people ask me about the game today compared to 20 years ago and so on. I mean, the players are definitely trained off the ice a lot better, and, with personal trainers and so on and that. But, also, I mean, the skates, the sticks are definitely,
Yeah.
20 times better than they were during our era.
Yeah.
But, they still play with a little black hockey puck that hasn't changed in 100 years. So, and hockey sense and a puck, you still got to be able to make plays and
Yeah,
shoot.
absolutely. Uh,
score and things like that.
yes. I got a lot of kids and parents that listen to my channel. I want to ask you, what kind of advice can you give parents or kids uh, with the game of hockey? Anything that you have?
Yeah, I think the best, thing, you hope your kid sets his own alarm clock and wants to get up in, maybe in the summer, do some of that training that he needs to do to make himself a better athlete. Or, like in Minnesota where you've got all kinds of outside hockey rinks. And, is he, calling a couple of his buddies and, they can't wait to go outside and play shinny hockey. And so, I mean, it has to come from within, the player and having that, desire and that attitude that he wants to get better. But, hockey, my family, I mean, we had 4 boys. My dad did, mom and dad did. And, to have great hockey parents, I mean, it takes a lot of commitment for all
Yes.
kids,
Yes.
To play this game, and not only from a money standpoint, but, driving them, to the rink and the tournaments and everything else. So I mean, you really respect and remember, how important your parents were when you were young and working your way up through the different levels of hockey.
Yes, for sure. They do a lot. Definitely, I see it out here, California. My other
And it
question is,
helps. I mean,
yes,
I was just going to say, though, I mean, they have someone like yourself, Jack, that's working with young players and trying to help them improve their shot and stick handling and so on. I mean, there's so many skill coaches out there now, and with YouTube and, going to some different, type of clinics to improve their game.
yes.
There's a lot more opportunities on that end. I was on the rink today with my little grandson. It
Oh, how
was,
nice.
7.
Oh, how
And
awesome.
one, it was kind of Martin Luther King Day, and, a lot of kids off school. So anyways, long story short, one of the dads rented some ice for an hour and a half, and there was, like older kids. We were one end, I was playing hockey with kids that were in Bottoms, are like 13 to 15 years old. And man, the skills that these kids had one-on-one, I was really impressed. You can see the younger kids too, 7, 8 years old, but when you get to be 14, 15, if you've got some really good skills that stand out and you can skate, I mean, they're going to find you. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's one of my other questions. So sometimes over the years, I have a lot of students that are very skilled, but because where they're living, they don't get the opportunity that other kids get. What would be the advice for a kid that is trying to make it to juniors? Do they need to play AAA hockey in order to make it, or they don't need to?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to play, probably AAA hockey at a higher level just to, compete, and sometimes, most of the time, there are players that are from Phoenix and Florida and different parts of the United States, California and so on. But, obviously the elite ones end up going to Ann Arbor and playing in that program. But,
Yeah.
you either maybe have to, go to Detroit area and play on a midget AAA team. Or, USHL is a great league for, young players to play there. So, you do have to kind of sometimes move away, for a couple of years, which is hard on the family. But
Yes.
if there's not enough competition in Florida and you stand out, similar to Matthews, out in Arizona, I mean, I think he, ended up, it was great for a while, but he got to a certain point where I think he went obviously to Ann Arbor, but, you have to do things to
Get there.
go to that next level.
Yeah. Gordie, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to me on my channel. And it was a lot of great stories and a lot of great information. Really appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Nice talking to you, and good luck making kids better.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Yep.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks.